Well, hello and welcome back to Mr. Robinson's 8th grade U.S. History and Civics course. I'd like to take just a few moments and kind of review what we have learned in the first three lessons of our first unit, the Foundations of Government unit, and then we will discuss the last two lessons that we will be learning in this first unit. So, when we began this unit on the foundations of government, we started with the lesson Why Government. And in Why Government, we talked about two specific men, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Now, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke both agreed on some things, such as the state of nature, what life would be like without government. And they also agreed on the idea of a social contract where people give up certain rights in order to be protected by the government. But where Thomas Hobbes and John Locke varied, where they disagreed with each other, was what was the best form of government and what is the basic role of government. Thomas Hobbes called government a Leviathan. He wrote a book called a Leviathan. He believed in a single monarchy where the people, once they enter into a social contract with the government, they don't have the right to question it or ever leave that social contract. Once they enter into an agreement with the government, they are stuck. Where John Locke believed that government had one basic function, and that was to protect people's natural rights, rights that they are born with, that they are given by their creator, and those rights cannot be taken away from them. And those specific rights are life, liberty, and the right to own property. Thomas Hobbes also believed, John Locke also believed that if a government failed its one job to protect natural rights, that the people had the right to change their government or to revolt and rebel so they could restore another government that once again did its only job of protecting natural rights. So that was our first lesson in Why Government. From there, we learned about the sovereign state. We learned about what it means to be an independent state. And the main takeaway from this lesson was the four roles of government. Government serves four basic roles. They make laws, they protect the state, they keep order, and they provide services. But it's important to remember that the only reason why a government makes laws, protects the states, keep order, and provides services goes back to the idea of the one job of government of protecting natural rights, life, liberty, and property. From there, we went to our third lesson, Who Rules? And we took a look at the different types of government that exist within the world. Governments like an autocracy, a monarchy, dictatorship. The two different types of democracy, a representative democracy like what we have here in the United States, where we elect people that vote on our behalf, or a direct democracy where there are no representatives and every single citizen votes on every issue. We also looked at types of governments like oligarchies, juntas, a theocracy, a government based on religion, and what anarchy is, the lack of government at all. Then we took those first three lessons, we put what we learned in those together, and you had this project, the Create Your Own Sovereign State project. Now, we're going to move on to our final two lessons in this first unit on the foundations of government. The first lesson for this week that you'll be looking at is called A Dive into Democracy. We talked just a moment ago about how the United States is a democracy, and we are a specific type of democracy. We are a representative democracy. So, in this first lesson for this week, A Dive into Democracy, you're going to take a look at ancient Greece, and you're going to look at the beginnings of democracy. What was democracy like in ancient Greece? And from there, you're going to complete these activities. A, you're going to match up the definition to the correct political term, and you will get all of that information from the text. Then you'll go to B, fill in the box. There were three main political institutions in Athens. You will have learned about this in the reading. Write the name of each at the top of each box. So you'll write one here, one here, one here. Then below the name, write what each group did. Then place a check mark in the box if citizenship was required to participate. So there are three things that you'll need to do for section B. Then on C, you'll look at citizens were the foundation of government. List the requirements for being a citizen in ancient Athens. Once again, you'll go back into your text and you will fill out what were the requirements, what were the 4 requirements for being a citizen in ancient Athens. Then last but not least, you're going to do some math. There are 4 math equations that you are going to need to go back in the text, find the information, and then you'll put your answers right here. And there's a little hint. You're going to be figuring some percentages. Use this formula to help you create those percentages, which will go right here. Then finally, you're going to do a little brainstorming activity. Now that you've learned about Athenian democracy, what terms and structures do you think we borrowed in creating the government of the United States? Make a list. Your list can include things that seem similar to, but somewhat different from, Athenian democracy too. Number your list. We started you off, but you can always add more. I would like for you to come up with 8 different things that we learned about with Athenian democracy that the United States borrowed when they created their government, when we created our government. Now, we haven't learned a whole lot about that yet, so you may have to do a little bit of research, or you may have to do a little bit of using some of your prior knowledge if you have some prior knowledge. So that is a dive into democracy. The second lesson and the final lesson in this first unit is called limiting government. The United States has a limited government. Some of the types of governments that we learned about earlier in the Who Rules lessons, those were unlimited governments. Those were governments that had no limits, like a dictatorship, or in some cases, a monarchy, specifically in the monarchy that Thomas Hobbes described in Leviathan. The United States is a limited government. So as you read through this document, you're going to learn about some of the limits that are placed on our government. Remember, government has one basic job, has one basic function. That is to protect natural rights, the rights to life, liberty, and property. So when we created our government, we placed some limits on our government. And as you read through this, you're going to learn about some limits that are placed on our government, and you're going to learn about some instances in history where there were governments that were not limited. Now, this assignment is a little bit more involved than the previous assignment. So, take a look here. First, it says mark it up. You're going to have to go back through the text where it talks about Alberto Fujimori, power in Peru, and you're going to have to complete the following steps. First, you're going to go back into the text, into this part of the text right here, and you're going to circle 4 things that should have kept Fujimori's power in check. Next, you're going to go back into the text and you're going to underline the actions that Fujimori took to get rid of those checks. What did Fujimori do as the leader in Peru to remove limits on government? Then last but not least, you're going to draw a rectangle around the bad things that happened after Fujimori had complete control. When you are done with that, B, you're going to sequence, number the following events from 1 to 8 in the order they happened. So one more time, you're going to go back up into the text and you are going to sequence these events. So A, did that come first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, or eighth? You need to go through these, find what was the first thing that happened, and put a 1 there. Then the second thing, put a 2 and a 3, and so on. So in B, you are sequencing. C, Pros and cons. What are the benefits of giving one leader total control? What are the drawbacks? Brainstorm 4 ideas for each and fill in the organizer below. You don't have to repeat what's in the reading. It's okay to use your own ideas. So here, what are some benefits to having one leader who is in total control? What are some drawbacks to having one leader who's in total control? Next, we're going back to Fujimori again. Read each event. Which limit on government failed? Write it on the line above the event. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one of these goes where? Next, you've got a crossword puzzle. Here are your questions, and you'll put those in your crossword puzzle. Next, limits to government. For each fictional country, mark which limits the country does not have. So you'll read about these 2 fictional countries, limits that are missing. Mark, put a check mark, an X, something. Use the scribble tool, something. Which limits are missing? Next, F, what do you think? Fill in the boxes. Take this opportunity to express your opinion. Rank the limits of government in order from 1, most important, to 5, least important. What do you think out of this is the most important limit on government? What do you think is the least important? Then over here, I ranked one of these as the most important because, and tell me why. I ranked which one of these the least important, and tell me why. Next, guessing game. Choose one limit on choose one limit on government. Use the descriptions in E, right here, in E. Use the descriptions in E above as a model to write your own description about a fictional country that does not have that limit. Then, read your description aloud and see if your classmates can guess which one is missing. Obviously, that part you do not have to do, unfortunately. Then, this lesson will finish with 5 limits on government. You'll have to answer these questions, and you will one more time use the text for your answers. Now, if you have any question about these 2 assignments, I'm going to ask you to email me. Please do not put a comment in Google Classroom. I have a hard time finding those. It's not a very good way to communicate with a teacher. Please email me. In the subject line, put the name of the lesson. So I have a question about limiting government. That would be your subject line. Or I have a question on a dive into democracy. Dive into democracy would be your subject line. And then in the body of your email, that's where you will ask your question. These are all due by Friday at 2:35, along with your 2 daily bell ringers for this week, which both deal with the horrible institution of slavery. All right, everyone, thanks for watching and have a great day.